G'day guys, welcome to the mailbag. We have a breaking news exclusive here. Very pleased to introduce our newest member of the mailbag team, Jake Humphreys. Jake, welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, it's been a journey, hasn't it? So I've been a subscriber, I would say, to your tennis mail since the start of the year, and we've been exchanging bets and tips, I suppose, for a number of months now. And our sort of conversations have led us to you getting on board with the mailbag, and we're very pleased to have you on board. I've seen your results. We'll touch on that a little bit later on during our chat. But another bet type, another winning punter added to the roster at the mailbag is very exciting, and opening us up to another realm, betting tennis and all types of different bet types within the sport. So I'm looking forward to that. But firstly, let's talk about you, your background, and I suppose your story and journey somewhat to getting to bet on tennis.
Well, just growing up, wasn't only watching tennis, but was watching, rugby league and racing and football, basketball, whatever I could get my eyes on, really. And so I've always really, really liked sport, particularly tennis, just from like Aussie Open standpoint. I think the same as a lot of other Aussies. When it rolls around in January, everyone sort of watches it with their parents or whatever when they're growing up. And that was the same thing as me. And then when I was 20, I'd finished school. I went off to uni to do sports journalism. And basically I was already like really exposed to sport, was really in love with it. I felt like I knew quite a bit about it already. And then I went over and like approached it from like, I approached sport from like an academic standpoint, and I basically that just made me watch sport more than I already was. Like I just completely it dominated my life. And then I got to the point where I think I was about 21. It wasn't long that I was into uni when I started thinking about having a bet. I thought, hey, maybe I can use this kind of knowledge to my advantage. But obviously understanding sport is one thing and understanding the market is another thing. Like you start, if I could look at some of the day one bets that I made, I'd be mortified. But basically I was an early rugby league punter, American football, stuff like that. And I liked tennis, but I never liked it as much as I like my mainstream sort of sports. But what I found was that it was just a little bit easy to capitalize on the market. I started noticing some prices that were a little bit off. I started noticing they were putting out some obscure markets with prices that I really, really didn't agree with. They've gotten better over the years, like as far as releasing your service break markets, your total match games correctly. But I still feel like it's an exploitable market. So yeah, I just started punting progressively. Got a job as a journalist. I was still punting quite a bit on tennis and all these other sports. But then about 12 months ago, I left my job as a journo and decided to start punting full time. A couple of years prior to that, I'd had a little subscription service on the side with I'd done other sports in the past, but tennis was the one that really started to take off. People started to enjoy that a lot. So yeah, I left the career, so to speak, the journalism, started punting full time 12 months ago. Started selling picks to a circle of mates, and then it sort of branched out more. And here we are, just in love with tennis. Can't keep my eyes off it, and love punting on it. So,
yeah, I suppose it's very similar type stories, isn't it, to what you hear from, or particularly from the mailbag guys. Anyway, similar sort of thing. In love with working on enjoying watching a sport, then going through that journey of becoming betting on it, and then trying to understand it a bit deeper from a more analytical standpoint. So. Yeah. Plenty of similarities there. So let's talk about the last 12 months, I suppose. I've been sort of tracking your stuff, got some results here, which will be readily available on the mailbag website when we kick off the service towards the end of this week as we close in on the next tournament. 529.08 units out, 627.78 back for a profit of 98.7 units, going at a tick under 19% profit on turnover, which is a massive 12 months.
I was really hoping to get that 100 by the end of the year, just so I could. But what that spreadsheet represents is it's not 12. It's this year, so it's 2022, and then there's separate data for last year that's also going to become readily available as well. But basically, the freshen up over last year, I think when tennis knocked off in 2021, I just basically spent the whole summer getting ready for that Aussie swing in January, and from the get-go I mean, there's an element of luck involved, but it's been like a really big year as far as like preparation and studying and data and all that stuff. And it's nice when it's sort of, manifests in that way. So the lads that are part of it have had a really good year, and we just finished off that US Open tournament. We were on the outright winner, Carlos Alcaraz there, which was just like a perfect finish. Then segueing into this mailbag thing. So everyone's up and about. No, it's been a really good year, like 19% POT. If someone said I'd be hitting that rate at the start of the year, I'd be stoked. I would have taken that on the spot.
Absolutely.
So
it's a great result. I think for anyone watching and interested in sort of getting involved a little bit, one of the things that was a bit of an adjustment for me when I was following along, bet types and when the markets come out and where they're available. If you could just touch on some of those things to give people a bit of an insight of what to expect if they were to get involved with the service.
Yeah, well, I mean, as is the case now with every sport, right? Like when people first started betting, or at least when I first started betting, using rugby league as an example, the totals and the sides were more prominent, and you wouldn't have like that many niche markets, player markets, and stuff like that. But like, as I suppose the markets progress a little bit, all of the, you've got your player props, you can bet on fantasy points in NFL, you can bet on basically everything within a match, and tennis has just sort of followed suit. So, I don't think many people will be surprised to hear this, but there's much more happening from a tennis betting standpoint than, just who's going to win and in how many sets or whatever, something that I've had a lot of success with over the last couple of years, and it has easily been my best performer is just the outright market. So it's a futures market. You break down a draw before a tournament starts. You cut the draw, you try to find some value. You assign all the players your own prices, and then you cross-check that with the bookies, the same as what all the lads are doing, what you blokes are doing with your horse racing. And that's the one that's been the real breadwinner for us. But then you've got things like, player to break serve in the first set. How many times will X player break player, things like that. Like, it does get pretty technical, and those markets have performed pretty well for us. And another question that you asked was, when are these markets coming out? Well, I mean, the thing with tennis and what's hard, and I want people who are thinking about jumping on board to understand this and be prepared for it, is that, using your service as an example, Curly, there's an 8-race Doomben card or a 9-race Doomben card. Everyone knows when the races are going to kick off, and more, they know it's usually going to be on a Wednesday or a Friday or whatever, or a Saturday. They know when your picks are going to come out. With tennis, we don't actually have that kind of schedule to rely on because, on a week-to-week basis, they're literally playing in different countries. They could be in Germany, and then in Italy, and then in Switzerland or whatever. And that does have some sort of an impact on when the markets are actually coming out. These markets are primarily coming out from Europe, at least to begin with, I feel like a lot of the time, which does mean sometimes you're getting things released really early or really late. So it's not as simple as just, Saturday markets for horse racing, they go up on a Wednesday, bam, it's not like that. And that does make it more difficult to follow. But I also believe that it's, as I said at the top, it's a really exploitable market. And a lot of the time when these things first come out, for that, the 2 or 3 hours after market release, they're really attackable, and late as well, of course, when you're getting drifters and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as the times, you really can't say. You really can't say, oh, well, on average or more often than not, it's coming out at this time. It's this time. It's honestly a variety. And some bookies are quick to put them up some weeks, and some bookies are slower some other weeks. So I think that's probably the deterrent for a potential subscriber, the fact that, hey, look, it is going to be tricky to ascertain and prepare for exactly when these prices are going to come out. However, one thing I really want to be doing, transferring over the mailbag, is being like extremely informative and punctual as far as letting people know when I anticipate markets to come out, windows in which we're going to bet, be prepared here. So you're not sitting around all day thinking, oh, when's this bet going to, I want to really structure it so that people know when it's going to come out. But by the same token, it is still difficult to anticipate. So it's a bit all over the shop, the tennis market, but that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it fun. It's an around the clock thing. Like, you could have prices coming out for any tournament at any time, and we got to be ready. So that's what you're taking on as well when you sign up.
So, and as far as speaking about the different books, would you have you got a bit of an idea from anyone watching of where or what book is best to have access to, so you can so you can capitalize on these picks.
Yeah, so like, and the spreadsheet that you mentioned will be available for people to look at. I like to sort of categorize it by market types, So for example, I think the money line or the head-to-head market, is performing at somewhere around 10 or 12%. It's doing quite well. Those types of markets are going to be readily available on your top sports. Those guys they'll bet you. Obviously, I know a lot of people have trouble getting down at certain bookies, but you have your money lines and your head-to-heads on your top sports, right? Bet365 is another one that's quite important, but obviously this is part and parcel with being a bettor and being a pro and being good and all that sort of stuff. And even you guys following follow the mailbag for long enough, and you're going to start getting, your accounts looked at and stuff like that. I know not everyone can get down anywhere, but the agencies that are most important, Bet365 and TopSport. Bet365 for your futures and your service break markets, and then TopSport just for your standard head-to-heads when you actually want to have 2 or 3 units on a money line pick or a match total. And then basically the good thing about tennis is everyone offers it. Yeah. So it's not like, even though the tournaments you might never have heard of, ATP San Diego or ATP Metz in France, all the bookies are at the bare minimum going to offer a head-to-head price. So you're going to get on those. If you just bet on those for the last 9 months, you'd be turning over at 10, 12%. So at the bare minimum, you're going to get those. But for the outright selection, sometimes it is useful to have your Bet365. Bet365 is very good for your quarters markets. That's one of the only agencies that offers that. But at a minimum, if you've got your top sport and you've got a couple of others scattered around, you'll be okay. But it's just like with your stuff, Curly, sometimes it is fastest finger first, with these prices, and I want to try to be as realistic and as reasonable as I can, maybe tracking average prices across bookmakers. I'm sure you and I'll have a bit more of a chat about that, but prices do move when we tip stuff up, but there's a wide array of bookies that you can get on. So
yeah, excellent. It's looking forward to it. So the first event will kick off for us will be Monday. Now, I think you mentioned there San Diego, which for any Anchorman fan, I think means a whale's vagina.
I thought you were a California guy. San Diego.
San Diego. And there's in the US, and there's a tournament in France or France. Metz.
France, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple kicking off on Monday, and one thing that I want to touch on that's I think it's an important talking point. Like every time we get to majors, right? People say, do you have a tip here? Do you have a tip? People want to get around the service or just send me questions when the majors are on. But one of the things I say to them, I heard an adage back in the day when I was doing some studying. I might have been first year uni, and some bloke said the Super Bowl pays the same as a baseball game in July. And basically what that means is, even though the US Open, the Aussie Open, these Masters tournaments are more prolific, oftentimes, not even oftentimes, all the time, the market is sharper, right? It's a more exposed market. The odds makers know what they're doing. It's all eyes on this. You're usually going to get the best version of each player, usually, but it's these ATP 250s and 500s where I'm actually performing better over time because you talk about players, athletes and stuff having hangover periods where they might be a little bit flat or can you imagine the war room at Ladbrokes or whatever, they're taking a lot of bets on tennis over a 2-week period of time, and then they come out and they've got to start making adjustments for these 250 tournaments. The bookies can get flat sometimes as well. You know what I mean? With these tournaments on the back end of US Open, there's so many factors, so many guys who have had, difficult swings, short swings, injuries, long matches. It's a very tough time to be a bookie, in my opinion, when you've got these 250s coming out. So even though you want to bet on the US Open, you want to bet on the Aussie Open for the action, that's actually the smaller tournaments where we're going to have more profitability over the long haul. So Monday, San Diego, Metz, they should be good ones on the hard court.
And I'm thinking as well, and I have no data to back this up, and just agree with me if I'm wrong, I feel like that the sport itself has gone through a bit of a generational shift. We've gone through the big superstar tournament favorites winning consistently, over a long period of time, as long as I can, last 10 or 15 years, probably. When you think back to Federer, Rafa and Djokovic, in the men's completely dominating. And Have you seen a noticeable difference there with the markets not being so centered around a few?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a new world number one now. Carlos Alcaraz, the 19-year-old from Spain, and Casper Ruud from Norway is up there with him in number 2. These guys are quite hard in the market. A thing that is good to attack. There are more and more opportunities nowadays to bet against Djokovic, Nadal, Federer when he's playing. He's not actually playing at the moment, but you feel like sometimes Rafa and Djokovic are getting priced like they're in their prime, particularly Rafa.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot of the time. There's quite a few players on the main draw. Their SP, their consistent starting price is driven a lot by reputation and past achievements than what it is, what have you done for me lately? There's guys like that, Denis Shapovalov. There's lots of guys who actually have losing records on the main draw, but because of their reputation, they just get that automatic percentage in their favor. And that does happen a lot with Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, and even Roger Federer when he decides to come back. So there is a shift there, and there is an opportunity to capitalize and bet against these players. But I mean, the market's pretty good, generally speaking. But by the same token, this narrative of, the big three and these main players falling to the wayside, this has been going on for 6 or 7 years, and they keep coming and they keep winning slams. So you've really got to respect them as well. Like 5 years ago, if you said, all right, I'm going to bet against Djokovic, Rafa, and Roger at these major slams just because I feel like they're starting to fade, you'd be living under a bridge somewhere. Like you would have lost plenty of bets. So yes, there are opportunities to bet against them, and the market does wind them in too far a lot of the time, but still got a lot of respect for those lads. So yeah, but they're on the way out. They're definitely on the way out.
Well, I think we're coming into a great time of year. Obviously, there's going to be a build up into the Australian summer. So we're launching your product this week. We're going to be ready later this week with everything on the website, with results and packages and pricing. And then so we can be ready to bet into the tournaments that kick off from Monday. So really looking forward to that. And no one's got time to do form on tennis. So if you're going to watch sport, you might as well bet on it, is my mantra. So
nothing worse than not having action, baby.
I swear I've now completely changed my ideal around sport, but sport exists to bet on it. And I'm going to be watching more tennis. So I'm excited.
You can't be watching the Aussie Open next year and not having a clue, but having bets on left, right, and center. We're preparing. That's our what do they call it when a horse is like preparing for it's my grand final, that Aussie Open. So we're going to work our way into that, and then hopefully January we'll be firing on all cylinders. Yeah, the mailbag.
So obviously your product will be available at the mailbag.com.au. Go to the shop, but also we'll be seeing more of you via some written content and some video content as we preview some of these tournaments as well going forward, and introducing tennis as one of the staples of our wagering diet at the mailbag. So really pleased to have you on board. We're excited. Don't forget to head over to the mailbag.com.au. We've got a couple of nice little introductory offers as we welcome Jake to the team, and look forward to working together, mate. Great to have you.
Good stuff. Cheers, Kelly. Thanks, mate.